So I recently ended a friendship and I'm ready to talk about it. And part of the reason I want to talk about it is because as I was navigating this, I realized there is so much online about romantic relationships, how to end relationships, how to heal, how to move on. But when it comes to adult friendships, there's really not that much out there. And so I want to talk about it. And honestly, this breakup had been a long time coming, but I was ignoring all the red flags because I felt guilty, for one, and two, because I was holding on to this fantasy of a friendship that didn't match reality. So let's talk about it, because I think this is probably something a lot of people go through, where they know a friendship has run its course, but they stay because maybe they feel bad, or maybe nothing bad enough has happened to justify ending the relationship. But I want to tell you something. Your nervous system letting you know that the friendship is over is enough. That is reason enough. That is justification enough. And we're going to talk about it. So number one of the clearest signs that something is off with another person or with a friendship or a relationship, right? If you consistently are walking away from conversations with this person feeling emotionally drained, that's not normal. That's not just a rough patch. That is your nervous system and your intuition telling you that something is off. If you constantly feel tension before you have to hang out with this person, and notice I say have to, like it's a chore, right? If it feels like a chore, if it feels like you're constantly like trying to rack up the energy to get on the phone with this person, if you get kind of annoyed when you see their name pop up, that is your nervous system telling you something. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person. You don't have to feel guilty about it. You just have to admit to yourself where the disconnect is happening. That's why I always say, you guys, like self-awareness is so important. Reflection is so important. Ask yourself questions. Why am I feeling this way? What am I really feeling? Because at the end of the day, if you don't do that and you don't get to the core of it, you're going to end up justifying certain things and making excuses for people that don't deserve it. You don't need a list, like a huge laundry list of toxic traits to justify your feelings. That feeling of being drained, that is the justification. Like I said, that is the data that you need. If being around somebody regularly makes you question your sanity, makes you question yourself, if you feel like you're carrying the entire weight of an emotional friendship, that's not a friendship. That is a dynamic that is depleting you, and it is okay to want to let go of that. I'll tell you what that looked like for me, right? That looked like phone calls where I was basically a sounding board. I felt like I was carrying the entire weight emotionally of this friendship. I would hang up and feel like my soul had been wrung out. That sounds intense, but it literally felt like I had just gone through a therapy session with somebody. And I'm no one's therapist, especially when I'm not getting paid for it, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is, I kept rationalizing it, right? And I'll tell you why in a second. But I kept rationalizing it. I was like, let me give her another chance. Let's get on another call. Maybe something will be different this time. She's just going through a hard time. She just needs support. Once I told myself the truth, which is that this wasn't just a temporary season of her life or whatever, it was a pattern, that's when I started to take it seriously. That is when I sat down with myself and I was like, this isn't just something that has happened once or twice. We've been friends for years. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, this is how I've always felt. And I really had to sort of analyze myself and be like, why was this happening? Like, why do I attract this kind of friendship? And I grew up watching movies where there's like these inseparable group of friends, right? The sisterhood of the traveling pants energy. I wanted that deep sort of best friend kind of energy. I wanted that ride or die closeness. And when I found a friendship that mimicked that, even if it was surface level, I was clinging onto it. Even though the substance wasn't there, even though I didn't feel seen, even though it felt one-sided most of the time, because on paper, it looked like what I really wanted, or what I thought I wanted, right? I wanted that like movie version bond. It was a fantasy. That safe kind of like pour your heart out kind of friendship I always imagined, but the only person pouring their heart out, like, it was not me. And for a while I really, like I said, convinced myself that this is what it was. But when somebody's words don't match their actions, it really becomes impossible to ignore. And it's funny because I talk about having to repeat patterns throughout your life in order to fully learn them. I talk about how sometimes we think we have overcome a pattern or a cycle and then it comes back sort of in a different way. I believe that the reason for that is that we need to see a pattern from different perspectives in order to fully understand it and fully overcome it. So in my case, this sort of friendship that I was seeking, it was a pattern that kept repeating itself in different ways. When I was younger, I wanted to be a part of the popular crowd. I was so insecure in myself that I used to let them poke fun at me. And it was those kind of things where they would say something about you and then be like, oh, relax, it's just a joke. And I would kind of brush it off because I was like, oh, well, they're still my friends, right? And I feel so bad for my younger self looking back. I'm like, this poor girl. She was just trying to fit in and she literally always felt like the tag along. And now this same pattern showed up in a different way. Like, I really wanted this kind of friendship and I ignored certain red flags. I'll give you a quick example, right? One thing I noticed, and this isn't to drag anybody, this is just to share my experience, right? This person's actions and their words did not match. This person would say like, oh, hey, I wasn't feeling so great today, so I watched one of your YouTube videos and it really helped. But then publicly, there was never a like, never a comment, never a share, which is fine. Like, your friends don't have to be your biggest fans or your hype people or whatever. But at the same time, like, you know those TikToks that are like when somebody watches your story but they don't interact? That's literally what it felt like, especially because behind the scenes, privately, this person was telling me like, I really like your content, it's very helpful to me. And when I finally admitted it to myself, like when I stopped making excuses and being like, oh, well, you know, well, she did tell me in private, so I guess that's enough, I reminded myself like, real friends don't just take your energy, they don't just consume, in this case literally, they also invest in it. So where was the investment? Why was this still feeling one-sided if this was a real friendship? And again, I kept making those excuses, and part of that is that I felt guilty. But outgrowing somebody doesn't make you a bad person. That's literally what held me back for so long. It's like, I felt like this person hasn't done anything terrible. There was no betrayal, there was no blow up, right? And that made it harder to walk away because I was like, I can't pinpoint the exact thing. It's just a vibe, it's just a feeling, right? And like I said, that feeling is justification enough. Your nervous system, your intuition know what's up. But eventually I had to ask myself, if I'm the only one being drained, if I'm the only one doing all the work, why am I still calling this a friendship? And the truth is, you can care about somebody and still realize this dynamic is not healthy. You can care about somebody and still choose to step away, and that's what I had to remind myself. No guilt. Outgrowing somebody doesn't mean that you think you're better than them. Outgrowing somebody doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you're finally listening to yourself and trusting your own intuition. And honestly, it's because of that guilt that I put off ending the friendship for so long. And I'm going to talk about exactly how I ended this friendship. So for a while, because of this guilt, I was like, let me just let it fizzle out, because I can't pinpoint like an exact list of reasons, right? Like I said, there was no blow up, there was no betrayal, there was nothing like crazy that really stood out aside from how I felt drained every time I left the conversation with this person, how I felt like it was very one-sided, etc. Because of that, I let it go on for so long, and because I wasn't ending it, I was letting it fizzle out or whatever, it just kept going on and on. This person kept reaching out, we kept getting on phone calls. I was like, let me give her one more chance, let's see if she's changed, right? And of course, nothing changed. But when it came down to it, when I finally sat down with myself and I was like, this needs to end, like, I feel drained every time I see a text from this person, every time they send me something on Insta or whatever, I'm just like, okay, it is time to just call it quits. And so I reached out to this person and I was like, hey, you know what? Like, basically everything I'm telling you guys now, I feel drained. This relationship is one-sided and I don't want to feel like somebody's therapist and I need some space. And I'm not going to share the person's response or anything, obviously, because it was a private conversation. But let's just say the response kind of confirmed everything that I was feeling. It looked long and extensive and thoughtful at first glance, but then I was like, this sounds like it was written by HR. When somebody's response is very, I'm sorry you feel that way, and you don't feel a sense of remorse, or you don't feel like, hey, you know, like this person wants another chance, they're willing to try. For me, that was enough confirmation that I did the right thing. And honestly, deep down, obviously, I knew that I was doing the right thing, regardless of the person's response. Like, this relationship really did feel draining for me. And like I said, probably a million times in this video, that is enough to call it quits. At the end of the day, you need to protect your energy. You cannot thrive, you cannot grow, you cannot support others if you are constantly giving your energy away, if you are constantly being drained. And honestly, I don't even want one friend that makes me feel that way. I don't, especially when I finally came to the realization is that there are people out there who are so much better for me. And the funny thing is, I always say this, but energetically speaking, when you make room by ending things that are no longer aligned, whether that's with friendships or jobs, like literally anything, when you energetically make room, other things start coming in. Literally, I kid you not, and maybe this was a coincidence, but I don't believe it. I know the universe has so much in store for me. The day that I ended this friendship, the minute I sent that message, one, I felt so free, and that same day, I was reached out to by an old friend. And the funny thing is, we got on a FaceTime call that same week, and I literally felt so good about this friendship. Like, it was energizing. She asked me questions. Like, when I said something about myself, she listened. She asked follow-up questions, and then I listened back. It felt very reciprocal. It didn't feel like a therapy session. I was like, oh my God, like, this whole time I've been needing to let go, and I could have made room so much sooner. But again, because this guilt was taking over me, that's the people pleaser coming out of me, right? Because I felt like I owed this person somebody, or because I couldn't find enough reason to end the friendship, I was holding on to it for so long. And like I always say, divine timing, right? Maybe it was meant to be. Maybe that's exactly what needed to happen for me to fully learn this lesson and break this pattern. And who knows, maybe this pattern will come up again in the long term. But I feel like now I have the discernment to be like, okay, this is a wound that I've had since childhood when it comes to female friendships, and I'm ready to let go of that. I'm done trying to heal other people. I'm done being other people's therapist, right? And for that reason, I don't regret the friendship, right? I really value what I learned about myself, what I learned about my values, what I learned about my own patterns, and how I learned that you're allowed to let go of things that don't serve you without guilt. Even if they don't hurt you outright, right? Even if they once meant something to you. Even if you still care. So if you're in a season where you're kind of like reevaluating a friendship, ask yourself, does this person leave me feeling better than they found me? Do I feel energized? Do I feel respected? Do I feel seen? And if the answer is no, that is your body asking you to listen. That is your intuition telling you something. So let this be the last time you silence that voice, because I am telling you, I know it may be hard to step out of that comfort zone. I know it may be hard to feel like there's nothing better out there. But once you make room for things that are truly meant for you, they will come in. It is time to be honest with yourself, okay? Because you deserve so much more than somebody who just tells you they care. You need somebody who shows it. And if this resonated with you, I really want to hear about your experience. Let me know in the comments, like, what is this bringing up for you? Is this something that you've walked through or something you're still figuring out? Let's normalize talking about adult friendships, because you deserve friendships that are clear and real and mutual. And it doesn't get talked about enough, honestly. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, how you're feeling. And as always, I'm rooting for you. I'll see you in the next one.